Hello everybody, I'm super excited today because this is my first Magic the Gathering deck tech. Today we're going to be going over a Pauper deck known as Creatureless Blue-Black Teachings. Do you enjoy control? Do you enjoy controlling the game to where your win condition is controlling? Basically, the goal of this deck is to counter and kill all of their stuff until you're able to mill them out with 2 copies of Curse of the Bloody Tome. There's also the alternate win condition of 2 Pristine Talismans and buying back Evankar's Justice, which nets you 0 life each turn but kills your opponent 2 damage a turn. That one's kind of iffy because your Pristine Talismans can be destroyed, but the main win condition is the Curse of the Bloody Tomes, attempting to mill out your opponent by dealing with all of their threats. Obviously, this deck is called Creatureless Blue-Black Teachings for a reason, because there's no creatures in the main board, which completely negates your opponent's targeted removal and creature removal in game 1. It's blue and black, and because of this card right here, Mystical Teachings. Mystical Teachings is 1 blue and 3 of anything for an instant card that says, search your library for an instant card or card with flash, which isn't relevant, we don't have any flash cards. Reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. It has a flashback cost of 5 and 1 black, which this card is the center of the deck. Because of this card, a lot of the removal and the counters are one-ofs in the deck, because you can simply go fetch them up with Mystical Teachings at any time. And there's only 3 copies of Teachings, because you can use each of them twice, and you don't want to have a hand flooded with Teachings, because that just slows you down because of how expensive they are, unfortunately. There are some sorceries in the deck, but there's not too many of them. Now we're going to talk about the counter spells. And here it is, the beautiful page full of counter spells. I love counter spells. I love blue. I love being able to say no to your opponent when they try and cast a threat. Now, we have 4 of the powerhouse, the best counter spell ever printed, counter spell. Blue, counter target spell. It's an amazing card. It defines the Pauper format. We also have 2 of Exclude, which is 2 and a blue, counter target creature spell, and draw card. So in some instances, this can be a time walk. It's very good against decks like Tron, Kuldothu Jeskai, creature-oriented decks where getting their creatures on the battlefield is a big deal. We also are running a 1 of Daze, which is 1 and a blue, to counter target spell unless they pay 1, but you may return an island to your hand instead of paying its mana cost. So basically, turn 1 you play an island, it goes to their turn 1, they try and play something, you counter it. It's very good early game, it kind of falls off late game though. We also have 1 of Deprive, which is basically counter spell, but you have to put an island back in your hand as an additional cost. This basically works as our 5th copy of counter spell. Now this is what I was talking about when I said that we have a lot of 1-ofs. In our instant speed removal, we do have 3 Diabolic Edicts, which a lot of lists I've seen run Chainer's Edict instead of Diabolic Edict because it has a flashback cost, so you get 2 edicts out of 1 card. I do play Paper Pauper, which is why I chose Diabolic Edict originally, because it's much cheaper and Chainer's Edict is like $8 in the paper world. But I've grown to love Diabolic Edict because being able to search it up with Mystical Teachings whenever you want is a great upside, because Chainer's is a sorcery. Now, we have a big list of cards here. We've got Agony Warp, give target creature -3, -0, give target creature -0, -3 until end of turn. We've got Murder, 2 black and 1, kill target creature. We've got Crypt Incursion. Crypt Incursion is a great card against creature strategies. It's 1 black and 2 of anything that says exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard, and you gain 3 life for each creature card exiled that way. It's fantastic as a late game life swing to put the nail in the coffin against an aggro-oriented deck. We've got Devour Flesh, which is basically a 4th Diabolic Edict. It's 1 and a black, target player sacrifices a creature and gains life equal to that creature's toughness. This seems worse than Diabolic Edict, but it's mainly for whenever we board in Gurmag Angler in game 2 as a way to gain 5 life. In response to like blockers or whatever. We've got Disfigure, 1 mana, give creature -2/-2 until end of turn. That's good. Doomblade, 1 and a black, destroy target non-black creature. Fantastic against not black decks. Echoing Decay, 1 and a black, Give target creature -2/-2 when all creatures with the same name as it until end of turn. That's good against token strategies. We've got Tragic Slip, 1 and a black, target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Or if you have Morbid, if a creature's died this turn, then that creature gets -13/-13, which hits every single creature in the format. There's not a creature bigger than -13/-13. And we also have Capsize, which Capsize works as an alternate win condition on its own. It's 2 blue and 1 of anything, bounce target permanent basically, and it has a buyback of 3. So once you get up to 6 mana or 12 mana, you can start bouncing 2 of their permanents per turn to where they can't even do anything. You can bounce 2 of their lands per turn, and obviously they can't play 2 lands a turn. You can just shut them out of the game completely, which is a great feeling to just bounce all of their permanents to the point of not being able to do anything. Here is our card draw package. I've played with this deck a decent amount, and I've come to love Accumulated Knowledge. It's a great card. If you ever don't know what to search up with teachings, Accumulated Knowledge is a great choice. It's 1 and a blue, instant, draw a card, then draw cards equal to the number of cards named Accumulated Knowledge in all graveyards. So basically, you play this the first time, it's 1 and a blue, draw a card. Not great. Then the second time, 1 and a blue, draw 2 cards. Third time, 1 and a blue, draw 3 cards, and then 4 cards. It's fantastic, and if you're playing against a deck that also has Accumulated Knowledge, you can draw up to 8 cards with 1 spell. I don't see that happening very often, but it is possible. The other card draw spell we have in here is a 1 of Compulsive Research. It's 1 blue and 2 of anything for a sorcery. There's only 1 because it's a sorcery, but its target player draws 3 cards, then discards 2 unless you discard a land. So most of the time it's going to be draw 3, discard 1, which is fantastic. Now here are all of our sorcery speed cards that aren't Compulsive Research. On our permanent side, we only have 4 permanents in the deck. 2 of them are Curse of the Bloody Tome, which is 1 blue and 2 of anything, Enchant Player. It's an aura, and at the beginning of Enchanted Player's upkeep, they put the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. So basically, this works as our win condition. The deck list I built originally only had 1, but I found that it was too hard to win games like that, so I put a second one in there, and it's been working great. Once you start milling 4 cards a turn, not only are you getting them closer to losing, but you're milling out their threats, so you don't have to deal with their threats that way. We have 2 of Pristine Talisman, which works as another win condition, 3 of anything for an artifact that you can tap to add 1 mana to your mana pool and gain 1 life. It's sort of mana ramp, and it gains you a life, which is great against grindy matchups. And once you have both of these Pristine Talismans on the field and you have 7 mana available to you, you can Evankar's Justice every turn, flashing it back to where you're dealing 2 damage to everything, including your opponent and yourself, but you're gaining 2 life per turn. So as long as your opponent isn't putting pressure on you and damaging you, you can win the game through that. There's Evankar's Justice, 2 black and 2 of anything with a buyback cost of 3, deal 2 damage to each creature and each player. We also have a 2 of Innocent Blood. Innocent Blood is a fantastic card in my experience. It's a sorcery, 1 black, each player sacrifices a creature. Whenever you do board in creatures, which we're going to get to soon, you might want to take Innocent Blood out because it does get worse whenever you have your own creatures. But in the main board, since you run 0 creatures, it's basically 1 black, your opponent sacrifices a creature, which is great in a lot of situations. Unfortunately, it's not instant speed, but it is a great card. Here is our mana base. Since it is Pauper, it is a little bit clunky. It can feel slow at times. Sometimes it's hard if you have just dual lands to get Counterspell online turn 2. But in my experience, it hasn't been too much of a problem. We have 4 Dismal Backwaters, which is a blue-black dual that gains you a life when it enters the battlefield. It enters tapped, as all the duals do. Dimir Guildgate, dual land, enters tapped. Dimir Aqueduct, we only have 2 of because it does slow down the deck quite a bit. It is a great card though. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you bounce a land back to your hand, and when you tap the Aqueduct, you get a blue and a black. It's not really mana ramp, but it does combo well with Radiant Fountain over on the right. Radiant Fountain, when it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. It does only tap for colorless mana, but it gains you life, which is great, and it combos with the Aqueduct. So you play Radiant Fountain turn 1, gain 2 life, turn 2 play Aqueduct, turn 3 play Radiant Fountain again, gain 2 more life. We only have 2 Radiant Fountains. We've got 2 Evolving Wilds to help with the mana fixing because we do only have 4 swamps. Sometimes it can be hard to get the swamps that we need, so the Evolving Wilds help with that. And we're running 7 islands because you want to have untapped blue mana. Turn 2, you want to have 2 blue available to counter anything that they might want to play. Or you might just want the islands to play a daze on turn 1 or turn 2. That brings us to our sideboard. Now in our non-creature sideboard spells, we have 2 Dispels, which is 1 blue counter target instant. This is great against control matchups and burn. Burn is like 90% instance, so this helps you to deal with that. We have 2 Duresses, 1 black, look at a target opponent's hand, take a non-creature card, they discard it. And this is great against decks like Tron, stuff that have big threats that they can't get out really early. It's just a great card against most decks that run non-creatures. We have 2 Negates, 1 in a blue, counter target non-creature spell. It's great against the control matchup and also against burn. Anything that runs non-creatures, Duress and Negate go hand in hand. We've got Steel Sabotage, 1 blue. Choose one. You can either counter target artifact spell or bounce target artifact. We have 2 of those. That's obviously for the Affinity matchup or the Kuldothu Jeskai matchup. And we've got a 1 of Unmake, which basically you're going to be casting it for 3 black, exile target creature. This is usually just for the Tron matchup and for decks that run Gurmag Angler in case you run out of edicts. You've always got this to just exile it, get rid of it for good. And here is our creature package in the sideboard. First off, we have 2 Stormbound Geist, which is 3 blue and 1 of anything for a 2/2 flyer that can only block creatures with flying, and it has Undying. This card is a powerhouse against Delver. They flip their Delver, turn 2, turn 3, you play a Geist, block it, it comes back as a 3/3, and you can block their other flyers. Delver has a lot of fairies, it's got more Delvers, and then you have a 3/3 that can chump block their fairies, their Delvers. It's a great card. Obviously we have the recent card from Fate Reforged that absolutely changed the Pauper format completely. Gurmag Angler, 6 and a black for a 5/5 with Delve. So basically, you exile all your cards that aren't teachings or accumulated knowledge, and you play a big 5/5. We've got Mole Drifter, 2 Mole Drifters. It's a great card, 4 and a blue for a 2/2 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 2 cards. You can evoke it for 2 and a blue. Most of the time you don't want to do that. You like to have the 2/2 flyer to kill them or to block their creatures. It draws you 2 cards. It's just a great card in general. And that is the deck. I will say a couple things about the matchups. Burn is a very hard matchup for the deck. I've played it quite a bit, and it's almost impossible to win. Burn just has way too many threats, and if there were more counterspells in the sideboard, then it would be a lot more winnable, but it's just hard to devote like 90% of the sideboard to one matchup. Other matchups are pretty good. Decks that have a balance of creatures and non-creatures are great for teachings because you've got the counterspells to take out their non-creatures and the creature removal to deal with their creatures. It's just decks that are heavy on one side of the spectrum that are really difficult for the deck to deal with. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed my first deck tech. Please leave some feedback in the comments. I would really appreciate it. Leave any suggestions for the next deck you want me to cover, and I hope you enjoyed.